employees at an office, you got to figure out a way to measure them. And if you can't measure their output, you can't just let them stay home. Now, look, there's a lot of personalities and types that can work from home and be incredibly effective. I am not saying everyone needs to go back into an office. I'm not trying to cause a kerfuffle. What I'm saying is, if you're a junior employee or new to corporate America or new to the military or new to whatever, you're going to need hands-on engagement and training, and you need help. I can't tell you how many times I had employees pinging me saying, Patrick, I know I'm jumping the chain of command, but I can't get my manager to respond to me. And I really need help for this customer. I don't know where they are. If we weren't home for COVID during those moments, they could have just walked down the hall and sought help.
Welcome to Leadership and Motivation Unleashed, practical leadership for modern workplaces, a podcast where we explore actionable strategies to help you lead with confidence, build cohesive teams, and create thriving workplace cultures.
We're here for the career-focused professionals climbing the corporate ladder, the managers navigating team dynamics, and the leaders shaping the future of work. In each episode, we'll break down challenges, share practical advice, and leave you with insights you can apply today.
I'm Patrick Law, your co-host, a Gulf War veteran with over 26 years of corporate leadership experience in banking and payments, blending precision and innovation with a tad of passion to solve big challenges.
And I'm Rachel Book, a C-suite trusted advisor and an HR leader with 2 decades of experience at Fortune 50 companies, specializing building people-first strategies and driving impactful talent solutions.
Together, Rachel and I, we combine operational expertise and transformational leadership to bring you real-world advice on leadership, workplace culture, team dynamics, career growth, and anything else that we may want to delve into.
So, if you're ready to take your career and leadership skills to the next level, you're in the right place. Let's get started. Hey everyone, thanks so much for joining us. The next topic that we're going to tackle is remote work. Remote work is a topic that has been so top of mind, especially in recent years, for sure because of the global pandemic, right? That thankfully is behind us, but also because technology has evolved and our roles and environments have evolved to allow for more remote work. And, I've been around remote work for a long time. I first started working remotely in 2006. So it was before we had video chat. It was before it became common or expected. And I always loved it, especially when my kids were really young. I've also managed remote teams over the years. And what I've realized is it's not for everyone and it's not for every job, right? Remote work has its place. And we're going to talk a little bit about what we're seeing now in the workforce, what we're hearing in the news about these return to the office mandates. Are they going well? Are they not going well? What are some of the pluses, minuses? So we're going to talk through that. And then we're going to leave you off with a quick takeaway from each of us. So Patrick, what are your thoughts on remote work?
I've always been, as I work from home now, for transparency, I've always been a proponent and a fan of work at the office. And there's actually some things on the internet, if you Google my name and office, things come up on websites about my approach to remote work and return to office things. Now, being, I'll call it a soldier, even though it was a long time ago, I do believe in following orders. And if the commander's intent is remote work, I'm going to support it and execute to the best of my abilities. If the commander's intent is to get your ass in the office, then I'm going to support getting everyone in the office. Some people would say, well, then you don't think on your own. I've actually had people say, Pat, you're just so robotic. I'm not robotic. I'm respectful to the people who pay my mortgage. So if the commander wants something, I'm going to climb the hill to execute on it. That doesn't mean I don't share my voice, and it doesn't mean I necessarily believe in the mission, but it's a choice to work where you work, and you need to execute with your voice heard. You can be respectful, those things. So I wanted to put that out before you hear the following. At US Bancorp, it was and I was there 14 years from 2005 to 2018. I think the math is right on that. I was at the office every day, 5 days a week. And if you pick apart the pluses and minuses of being in an office 5 days a week, is I think there's like learning through osmosis in an office environment. I think the cube environment, the office environment, you cannot replicate getting up from your chair, walking around the wall, and me going to see Rachel eyeball to work something out. Where in this environment, I call her, or we text, or we Teams. Both work and both are effective. Now, she and I are both very senior, so whatever learnings would happen about doing our job was probably minimal. And she and I are both very engaging, so we built a relationship when the moments we do see each other, whether here in Dallas or Miami or New York, where the two of us see each other on occasion. But for employees who don't have the tenure she and I have been blessed enough to acquire, and you're new to an environment or new to a role, learning something like that through a screen, I believe to be very next to impossible. Next to impossible. Not impossible, but unless your brain is built for remote learning, you can't do it. I have a buddy who listens to this podcast. He's a retired Marine colonel, and he's done several continuing educations after he left the Marine Corps. And he tells me, we were together a couple of weeks ago at a concert. He's like, I can't do remote learning. I have to be in a classroom. He drives to a site. It's a brain thing. Like whether you're 24 or 44 or 64, we all learn differently. And I think being together is a better learning experience than being apart. Now that's the leadership side of it. And I'm going to address this side of it because there's some darkness to this. During COVID, I was part of the team at my last employer, to remain nameless, that sent 30,000 people home to work. Because during COVID, you weren't coming into the office because whether you into all that or not, at the time it was go home. Don't be around people, don't spread germs, wear a mask, all that stuff, right? Putting that aside, the logistics of getting that many people home. Some people don't have Wi-Fi when they didn't. And then it became, well, who's going to pay for my Wi-Fi? I don't have a router. I don't have all this stuff. Like the logistics behind it is crazy. But the darkness underneath all of that is these companies invested a lot in their real estate. These buildings are not cheap. And they have shareholders to answer to and a board. And you're going to spend all that money on something, you better be in it. And I believe that's what's really driving return to offices. The tax breaks the local communities give these corporations, the expense. I mean, if you're a CFO, whether you're a company of 50 or 500 or 5,000 or 50,000, you're spending a lot of money on space. You better be in it and use it. So I believe it's a blend between humans need to be together. I mean, that's just science, right? Rachel, you know it better than me. And then there's the dark money side of it, if you want to call it dark. But corporations are meant to build value and growth. It's what capitalism is. So that's my view on some of that.
Yeah, it's interesting because as you were talking, what's going through my mind is a lot of the issues at hand that are attributed to remote work, right? Pro or con, pluses or minuses, I think is about other topics, and we're just using remote work as like a smokescreen. So for example,
please uncover it.
Yeah. So for example, we all know that when you give something to someone, it's really hard to take it away. Right. So for example, during COVID, right, you shone a light on situations where employees had additional expenses or burdens while working from home, right? Not everyone has a designated room in their house where they had an office space. Also back then, there were all kinds of other complications, right? Schools and daycares weren't open, right? People's lives are upside down. There were more people using the bandwidth in your home Wi-Fi than ever before, right? So slightly different situation. But on the other hand, people stopped spending money on commuting, on dry cleaning, right? On expensive salads, right? In the middle of New York City. And they realized, wow, I can save a lot of money by not getting dressed and traveling into an office every day. And I'm able to spend more time with my family and my pets and my hobbies. And so I think all of a sudden when you say, okay, now we have to revert to where we were before, and now you have to start spending money on dry cleaning and spending an hour each way commuting into the office, people are like, well, then you need to pay me more money because it's going to cost me a lot more. This eats into my salary. And so I think the challenges there are, am I being paid fairly for the work that I do? And are we balancing all of our different commitments in the right way? Right? So if for 20 years you always commuted into an office, right? Then because you didn't have to for 3 or 4 years, people forget that it wasn't always like this. right?
Right.
And then they expect to have those same considerations. So I think that's one point. Another point that I would make is one of the risks of remote work that you called out is that you don't get to learn. Especially research shows that the earlier someone is in their career, the worse remote work is for that same career. And it's because to get started until you develop your expertise and also to build your brand and your reputation, you need to be around people. You need to build those relationships. It's those impromptu conversations in the hallways rather than can we schedule a meeting because I have to ask you a question about that. And then some people, depending on their personality, their work style, they tend to fade into the background and they become out of sight, out of mind. And their careers don't advance as quickly because people forget that they exist. And that's why companies need to not only focus on, well, if you're in the office, then you'll have a great career. And if you're out of the office, you don't. It's how are we developing our people? What is the training that we're giving them? How are we giving people visibility? How are we encouraging them? We're giving people chances to brag on their accomplishments or to highlight achievements that people made. And then what other, maybe more digital or virtual ways can we try to build those relationships and adjust expectations, right? People will say, oh, I can't let my employees work from home. How do I know they're getting anything done? Maybe they're on their couch watching Netflix. Well, you know what? That's a bigger problem because as employers, we should be able to set expectations for our employees and then measure if the work is getting done, not necessarily whether they're on their couch or in their office chair, but is the work being done in the way that has been expected and communicated?
Rachel, those are really great points. I'll just say a few words on tracking and human interaction and remote leadership around those points, and then you can bring us home. So the dialogue I've had in my past and my comments earlier in this episode will tie into this a little bit, but for the longest time, I only knew office. I mean, I started in corporate America when, skirts and hose and heels and suits and ties, like a tie every day. It wasn't even a thought in my mind not to wear a suit and wear a tie, or you were not going to make it. It was part of the office uniform. Now, does that make me a dinosaur? I don't know. I'm glad I had that experience because there's no way I could have learned what I needed to know from home. I don't know if everybody, depending on where they are in their career, should work from home. As you and I sit on our homes recording this podcast episode, I don't think I could have had the career I had if I didn't start in an office and I could lean over to the cube next to me or walk into my boss's office asking questions, particularly in payments, banking, electronic commerce. There's so much. I mean, right down to acronyms used, or we all call the same thing by like 6 different acronyms and names. And then we're expected to talk to customers, prospects, employees, coworkers, bosses, partners, vendors. It's difficult in our environment. And, I have buddies who work in all kinds of industries and they say the same thing. And now, are we all experts on this? No, we're not. But we have opinions and we have a lot of experience in leading people. Enter technology changes and opportunities for dialing in. And we'll probably have some listeners that'll say, dial in. What does that even mean? Like, you used to connect with a modem and it made a funky noise. You guys can go out and Google it if you're listening and you want to understand even what I'm saying. But the modems would connect and you'd hear the pinging and then you're online. But it was clunky and it was like 1200 rate baud and it was slow. And people did get a taste for, hey, I can work from anywhere, particularly sales and RM types. Then, fast forward a decade and then COVID happened. And for better or worse, everybody got really good at working from home. And it has become incredibly difficult for a lot of organizations to get people back. You can just go out and read companies, whether it's Jamie Dimon and Chase or my old boss, Frank at Fiserv or any industry. Apple's did it or is doing it. Everyone's trying to get their employees back. And there has been an uprising of voices. I can do my job just as well at home as I can do in an office. I'm torn on it. And I was part of a team at Fiserv that helped move a lot of humans out of the offices. Wi-Fi, a lot of people didn't have Wi-Fi for whatever reason. Maybe it's economic, maybe it was by choice, doesn't matter. Getting all of those logistics lined up, laptops, computers, home, was very difficult. And you know what? We were successful at moving thousands of people out of that organization to their homes and do the best we can. But my bosses at that place were pretty adamant that we not get used to it because there wasn't a lot of MIS or data management or reporting that was available to hold people accountable. And whether you like it or not, I consider a lot of people like water. They find the path of least resistance going downhill. Watch water running downhill. It goes where it wants. It does what it wants. And if you look at it hard enough, it takes the best route, easiest route. Humans are the same way. And we had lots of people home watching their kids, trying to homeschool, grow their careers. And, Rachel, you've mentioned on other podcasts in your own writings and our conversations how that really hurt women, moms. Like, it really hurt. COVID was not good. It just wasn't good. And then you didn't have leadership properly prepared, managers, leaders, whatever you want to call them, to manage expectations at home. So bad MIS data, or maybe none at all, or maybe you did have one you thought was great. And then leaders not willing to have hard conversations or hold people accountable the right way to keep performance up. And one thing I heard from my bosses a lot was, people are still going to their branches. Bankers, a lot of bankers didn't go home. Maybe the corporate types did, but the tellers and a lot of folks in a lot of areas around the country. And I know there's all 50 states could potentially be listening here, but I know here in Texas, COVID didn't last long. People went back out. So the pressure to go back into an office was high. And then the vaccine thing, and we messed with people's heads and we wandered away from the mission. The mission is growth. Every business wants to grow. Businesses aren't in to be flat or to go down. You grow, whether you're privately held or publicly traded or you're a not-for-profit. Law enforcement, first responders, they didn't get to go home during COVID. They had to figure out how to work. Now, managing a police officer or a fireman or military, and my daughter was in the Army during, listening to her stories about how do you send the Army home? And she was an officer. She had people working for her, and it was difficult for her to manage her way through that. She and I would dialogue about what I was doing in corporate America, what she was doing in the United States Army, troops or, employees at an office. You got to figure out a way to measure them. And if you can't measure their output, you can't just let them stay home. Now, look, there's a lot of personalities and types that can work from home and be incredibly effective. I am not saying everyone needs to go back into an office. I'm not trying to cause a kerfuffle. What I'm saying is, if you're a junior employee or new to corporate America or new to the military or new to whatever, you're going to need hands-on engagement and training, and you need help. I can't tell you how many times I had employees pinging me saying, Patrick, I know I'm jumping the chain of command, but I can't get my manager to respond to me. And I really need help for this customer. I don't know where they are. If we weren't home for COVID during those moments, they could have just walked down the hall and sought help. Is that the end all be all answer? No. But whoever is out there listening and you're working from home or trying to get educated at home, students, look what happened to kids trying to learn from home. They didn't have their teacher right there. And then you're self-guiding yourself through a tutorial. Everyone learns differently. Everyone works differently. I think it should be up to the employer and the associate. I really do believe that. But if you can't work from home and be as productive as your organization needs or wants you to be, then you need to go into an office. I mean, at this point in my career, I could work on the moon. I really could. I travel a lot. We have other sites I go visit. I meet people that are Dallas-based here locally. This week, I've been in Dallas or Grapevine or wherever multiple times this week for lunch meetings. Eye-to-eye contact is great. You and I, Rachel, we do some of our best work side by side. So when I go to New York and you're going to be here next week for a meeting, those are great moments. And every employee I have, because we're mostly a remote org, probably half the org is remote, everyone says, man, I really love having lunch. Thanks. We need to do this more. There's just something about human to human contact that matters. So the debate is the debate. The outcome is the outcome. But I think it's corporate choice, your employer who does get a vote, and you get a choice. I mean, employment is free agency. You are free to go where you wish. But if you're learning or new, or you're the type of, whether you're tenured or not, that needs to be around other people, make the right choice for you. And your employer will make the right choice for them. That's my comments on it.
So many interesting comments. We could probably go on for hours about this topic, and maybe we'll do a follow through. So if you're curious about particular nuances of this conversation, right? COVID was a very unique time, but I feel like in many cases we're normalizing, and it's a new normal that we live in. So let us know if you want to talk more about it. But a couple of takeaways for us to bring with us. So the first thing is, it's not all or nothing, right? Companies like to say, we are a fully remote company. We are a fully in the office company. And it doesn't need to be that way. You can have fairness even in calibrating your policies and practices accordingly based on the role and based on the person. When a company does say everyone's got to be in the office, they should be mindful that they're restricting their access to talent only within commutable distance of a zip code, right? And so for some employers, that might be a sacrifice that they're not willing to make. And so what I would say to employers, one takeaway for you, if you're a leader, if you're a manager, choose what's best for your company based on where you're at in your stage of growth. If, as Patrick described, you're a well-oiled machine, you've got all of your accountability metrics, you've got your data, you hire experienced people, go for it, right? They might actually be more productive. But if you are a startup where those shoulders in the hallway can be really valuable, or you don't yet have the frameworks and the parameters to allow people to kind of do what they want, where they want, when they want, then you may need a period of in-office work until you can get to that level of maturity. And even if you choose to be primarily remote or in office, you might decide that for some roles or for some employees, you might choose something different based on what they do and based on what they need. You might say it's performance-based. You might say, hey, after a year of employment, if you've demonstrated productivity, blah, 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 then you can work from home. Or you might say only these jobs are approved to work from home based on the types of roles they are, the access to data, the security, things like that. So it never needs to be an all or nothing. And then a takeaway I would have as an employee, whether you're just starting out or whether you're an experienced professional and you're working remote or you're considering working remote, how you're going to build your brand and how you make sure people know you and recognize your work, even though you're not showing up every day, right? So building relationships virtually is different, right? Showing up, asserting yourself and your opinions, making sure you don't fall out of sight, out of mind is hard work, and it needs intention and purpose. And then one last takeaway, I think we're only supposed to do one, but I just can't help it. One last takeaway is when you work from home, set yourself up at a real desk, right? Try and find some of the discipline and the structure that you would have in an office. And it means you need a dedicated quiet space where people aren't barging in on you. It means you need to actually get dressed and, fix your hair or whatever it is you do if you have hair, but show up in a professional way and be on camera as much as possible, because when you're sitting in an office, everyone can see you all the time, right? And you should feel that way when you're at work, that, hey, if your boss was going to barge into your, home office or your basement office, you would feel appropriate, because it does affect how we do our work, right? Most people, again, I'm sure there are some exceptions, but most people who are sitting on the couch in their PJs, watching Netflix, while they're balancing their laptop on their lap, probably, and again, there might be some exceptions, so tell me if you are one of those, but most people aren't going to be as productive as if they were in work mode, even if they're in their home office. So that's what we have for you today. Thank you so much for joining us.
Bye, everybody.
Thanks for tuning in to Leadership and Motivation Unleashed. If you enjoyed today's episode, please leave us a rating and review. It only takes 1 minute, and it helps the show grow and reach more leaders like you in search of advice and motivation.
And don't forget to subscribe so you never miss an episode. Please remember to share with your friends and family and coworkers, mentors, trusted advisors. This show is for everybody. See you next time.